Kia ora, councillors and staff. Welcome, Stephen. We will start our council meeting for the 31st of August 2023. We'll start with Karakia.
Mōwena. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia makinikina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, he hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, mauri ora.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Much appreciated. All right, fair full agenda today, councillors. We've got a number of items, but I'm hoping we can make our way efficiently through them. I think that we do have some externals presenting with regard to the regional theater, and so we'll get on to that as soon as they are in the room. I'm hoping that we can wrap this up by 1 o'clock today, setting an ambitious target. Have I got support? Fantastic. All right. So we'll start with apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Nicol, Councillor Hodge. We also have apologies for lateness from Councillor Cookson. Any other? Tipa is, sorry, Councillor Mahuta is online already, so we are good. Have I got a move?
About to join up, please, then. Might be 5 minutes. Yeah.
Kia ora, Tipa. Moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Graff. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. All right. Confirmation of the agenda. Oh, no, all good. All right. So that's the agenda starting on page 2. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Marr, and second, and Councillor Strange. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Disclosures of interest. Any new disclosures or with regards to any agenda items? Nope. All right. So we'll go on to confirmation of the council minutes. So this is item 5.1. This is on page 6. Do I have a mover? Councillor Strange. Second, Councillor Graff. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we've got minutes of committees reporting to council. This is item 6 and is on page 25. 25 through to 99. We're taking these all in one motion. So these include the Strategy and Policy Committee, the CERC Committee, Hauraki Golf Forum, Civil Defense, or sorry, the CEDAM Joint Committee, Risk and Assurance, Future Proof Implementation Committee, the Waikato River Trust and Regional Council Co-Governance Committee, and Te Nehi Nui Joint Committee. That all decisions made under delegated authority be noted. Do I have a mover in that? Councillor Strange, second, and Councillor Clarkson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. Our next 2 sets of minutes to note are ones that have recommendations through to council. So the first one is the Risk and Assurance Committee. This is on page 57. Let's get there. All right, so this, sorry, where am I reading today? Just here. So this is the bottom of page 57. The recommendation, the section B recommendation to council is that the revised strategic risk statements and appetite statements are recommended to council for approval, noting the feedback from members at this meeting. Have I got is there anything that anyone would like to discuss with regard to that? No. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hughes, would you like to move that as the deputy of that committee? I'm happy to second that. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next one is on page 94. This is the Te Nui Joint Committee. The resolution is that, where is my? Sorry, where am I? Page 95. So resolution to recommend to Te Nui Trust, Otahanga, Waikato, Waipa, and Waitomo District Councils and the Waikato Regional Council that on the recommendation of the Te Nui Joint Committee, each member agency initiates the process of approval and signing of the Joint Management Agreement, noting the next TUI to be held on the 13th of September 2023. And that was circulated, the details of that agreement were circulated in the open addendum that was sent out separately. Councillor Graff?
I'm just wondering about that particular item. What are the differences between the previous and this current? Is there any updated?
I believe this is an initial agreement.
Oh, it's
so this
initial,
is the
it?
first time
Okay.
that this agreement has been entered into.
To be fair, there's very little difference if I understand correctly. So the previous Ngāwai or Waipa Co-Governance Forum was had the same member councils that we're approving today. That under the new settlement legislation, the Nui Joint Committee only had Otahanga ourselves, and Waitomo District. So what we're doing is effectively making an amendment to bring Waipa District Council and Waikato District Council into the fray. So to all intents and purposes, it's exactly the same as what we had before.
Great. Anything else you wanted to add, Neville, or are you?
No, Councillor Kneebone has summed it up correctly.
Great. So any other questions with regard to that item?
Happy to move.
So do we need?
This has already gone through the committee, right?
Yeah. So
Yes.
so this same recommendation is going to all of the partner councils. We met last week with all the partner councils representatives, including myself, and everyone was in agreement. We take it back to our partner councils, and then we're back on next middle of September to ratify, then sign it here.
Right. As part of the motion, is there?
We've got a motion that basically, I'll just step through this. We're looking for council to approve the recommendations from the Joint Committee, which in turn involves approving the Joint Management Agreement, approving the amended terms of reference, which give the new councils membership of the committee. We're confirming that the current co-chairs and deputy co-chairs remain at this point in time, and we're confirming that we're happy with the disestablishment of the Ngāwai o Waipa Forum once the merge is complete, and then we are, on the recommendation of the committee, we're seeking to approve the Joint Management Agreement and authorising Councillor Stu Kneebone, who is the co-chair, and Councillor Pamela Story, of course, who is the council chair and alternate for that committee, to sign the agreement on the behalf of council.
All right. Yeah, Stu, would you like to move that? I'm happy to second that as the alternate to that. Did you want to make a comment?
I think Noel's point is, if it involves you in the motion, are you in your best interest to move it?
Is it transparent, is my question, Madam Chair? The mover and seconder are the beneficiaries of the motion.
I'm happy to move.
Okay. Oh, we'll take the move.
We're not. I don't say we're beneficiaries. If I can't stand here and recommend this to you guys, there's something wrong. It means I'm against it. But whatever, you guys make the call.
I hope it's seconded.
Okay, let's just to get through it, we'll have it moved by Councillor Strange, seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, I don't believe we have our visitors from the regional theater in the room yet. Right, because we're so efficient. All right, then we will, can we just move forward in our agenda? So we'll move to the, to item 7.2, which is the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Report for June, July 2023. We've got Mr. Stuart Brown to speak to this. So we're on page 101 of our agenda.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as read and point you to a few pieces of interest for me. Going through, you'll see there that Air New Zealand, the case study from them came through regarding an incident that happened where a worker damaged an aircraft, which caused a lot of disruption for passengers and some millions of dollars, which was pretty significant. And they decided, that it wouldn't be the right thing to discipline the guy, but instead engage them to work through the organisation and pick up some of the instances that they could have actually improved themselves. It's a really good example, and I guess it was to share with you that that is the approach that we take here. We have a no blame culture, and we want people to raise issues as they come up, and that's where we have the reporting, and we're keen to see more than not, I guess, issues reported so that we can deal with them and discuss them. And we've just had the Health and Safety Committee meeting yesterday, where we look at examples like this from across the organisation that we can share and have learnings from, and have people involved in the investigation so that there are learnings and improvements rather than people fearful of punishment. So it was just to raise that. Moving through, you'll see that the reporting continues to be at a good level. And I think there was a question in the last meeting just around the instances of violence and abuse towards staff. And on, I think it's page 7, you'll see that there's a trend over the last 5 years. And it was good to see that we aren't seeing an increasing trend in this space. There have been a few more recently, which led me to think about, is this something that's increasing as time goes on? Thankfully, it's not. We have a reasonably stable, you'll see across since 2018 there, the numbers have remained reasonably stable. It's still not good, but we have a lot of things in place there to ensure that our staff are trained and able to deal with those as they arise. In point 37 on page 60 of you may have a PowerPoint for me. This just relates to the Ministry of Primary Industry going out with a pamphlet to support farmers. And I know Councillor Cookson would talk about this, about how we approach people and ensure that we have their well-being front and foremost when we're engaging with them. And this has been a really good document that all of our staff have been exposed to and have now got as a tool to take out with them and share and be able to support the farming community that are out there. So I'm not sure if we can show that, Dave, but that's something that we have there. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. And if you haven't seen that, I'm happy to get a copy to you.
So, sorry, are those, is that just a pamphlet that staff are carrying?
Yeah, that's right. They have access to it and they can bring it with them right on site, so it's really good. And it's very comprehensive.
Might be good to also distribute that to councillors if
Certainly.
they, on their request. So councillors, if you would like to have that made available to you to share with anybody, please just put through a request.
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much. And on page 5, you'll see there the Tier 1 and Tier 2 leadership walkarounds. It's pretty well detailed in there. I went out with the maritime team. It was a real education for me of what the teams have to deal with out there. I arrived and I had asked for a realistic day in the life of a maritime officer, and I certainly got that. On arrival, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but 3 of the team had a sort of 8 to 10 local people and business owners really quite badly abusing them and swearing at them in quite a personal manner. It was very confronting, and I was just genuinely really impressed at how the team managed that. They managed to keep calm, hear the concerns and to basically bring the tone of the conversation down to a reasonable level over a period of about 15 minutes, which was quite impressive. And that was really where that de-escalation training shows its worth. And from there, I guess there was a heightened state amongst the team, and they had to obviously go about then getting the large boat launched and all of the health and safety precautions, as well as me, never being out with them before, inducted properly, and the PPE and stuff. They did a fantastic job. And when out onto the water, Hayden actually stopped and said, can we just take a moment and just collect ourselves and think about what we're going to do today, the safety that we need to observe, and how we're going to conduct the rest of the day. So I was genuinely impressed. I took a short video that I thought that I would share with you. It might be of interest, just to hear from Hayden himself and see what goes on out there. So hopefully Dave will have that as part of the PowerPoint for us today. It's about 3 minutes long.
Guys, my name's Hayden Coburn and I'm a Deputy Regional Harbour Master as part of Maritime Services with the Waikato Regional Council. So the majority of our role is looking after navigation safety, looking after boaties on the water to ensure that they're safe, as well as maintaining infrastructure, so buoys, which signals to boaties where safe passages are, and also moorings and other infrastructure around the region of such. So today our task was coming to Thames, operating out of one of our assets, which is called Ko Whiriwhiri, and incorporating a number of our maritime officers to achieve a goal of maintaining the channel here. This channel has been of a hot debate by the locals here, as they have a lot of logs coming down the river here and affecting the navigation in and out of the marina here. So part of our role is to satisfy them by making sure that it is safe to enter and exit this river by the use of those nav aids. What we've done today is we've come down and we've met with the group and heard their concerns. They're very frustrated with the ongoing movement of the channel and their risks coming in and out. We've heard their frustrations, and we understand that it is very dangerous to exit the harbour knowing all well that there's logs underneath you, and that if you hit one of these logs, you're going to stop very suddenly, which could cause injury on board the vessel. So we're doing our absolute best to try and move these risks and have this safe channel in operation so they can come and go. So after speaking with them, we've brought all the equipment with us to achieve the job. We're making sure everyone's safe on board launching our vessel. We brought a whole lot of gear with us today. We're using a HIAB to lift chain and weights, which are about 50 kilos, to put together all the buoys, using chain cutters and various bits of equipment, put it all together and get those bits of infrastructure in the water. It is a commercial vessel, so we just need to make sure that we are safe on board and that any passengers on board are well inducted into the vessel, know about all their safety equipment on board, the EPIRBs, the fire extinguishers, the flares, all our different bits of communication should something go wrong. So dealing with frustrations of the public, we then come into play and have to switch on and make sure that we're safe on board the boat while we're trying to achieve a good result for them. I feel we've done that today. We've gone out, we've made sure that the channel is safe. We've moved the channel around the logs and made sure there's a few lights there so people can see that when they're coming and going at night. It's been a great day. The rain's come in now. Sometimes it's a dirty place to work, but it's a good gig.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think that's a really useful way for enabling corporate and everyone else watching today to get some insight into what that team is up to and some of the challenges that they deal with on a daily basis. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that or about the report, but happy to take them.
trying to see who was first, but I'm gonna go with Robbie. Councillor Cookson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Stu, I'd have to say that myself and Noel and Warren were out with staff in the Coromandel on last week, Thursday, and myself and Noel were inducted in office in Coromandel, and it was to a very high standard, and they explained all the things that we'd see that day. Any health things that we had to notify ourselves to them that were diabetics. If we had allergic to bee stings, it was very well put together. It wasn't long, it was only 5 minutes, wasn't intrusive or anything. So yeah, when it's something like that, I really appreciate all of the effort that goes into that 5-minute discussion. It was well presented and well done. So thank you, Chief.
Brilliant, Robbie. Really glad to hear that. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Stuart, how do councillors access the IRIS security register?
So we can do that through myself and Marie. We can certainly get you set up there.
So just a request through
Yep,
you?
yep, certainly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from councillors? If not, can I get a mover to receive the report? Councillor Cookson, seconded by Councillor Marr. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we'll continue on to item 7.3. This is on page 112, Code of Conduct for Elected Members. So this has been in the works for a while. Is somebody going to be? No. Oh, Mr. Chief Executive.
Yeah, councillors, I just thought I'd intro this by saying it's really good to have this report being able to come to you for approval today. It's been the previous code of conduct has been revised based on new legislation, feedback and experience, and of course there's a small working group put together by yourselves to look at the issues and recommend a report back. There is a slight amendment that I need to point out to you, and an amended resolution. So it's become apparent that the report that's come to council wasn't quite consistent with all what the working group had proposed and recommended, and that is on page 148, the removal of the last sentence in clause 13.3, and so we're actually asking that receive the report with that amendment. And the other one is in respect to clause. Sorry, I've just got to make sure I've got the right one here. To do with the 10.2 and J. Yep. JII. So it talks about so what we're proposing, instead of just putting a dollar value in the for this council, actually having it in line with legislation, which would be slightly different, which would be a cumulative amount of $500. So just those two amendments in the resolution. Otherwise, I'm sure the working group members would probably like to support, talk to changes.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd just like to say thanks to my colleagues on the working party. We've got to, I think, a good result, and I'm happy to move this as recommended by the Chief Executive. Thank you.
Happy to second.
So we've got a mover in Councillor Smith, a second in Councillor Strange. Any other comments or? Nope. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Welcome, Councillor Mahuta. All right, we will continue on now to item 7.4. This is on page 160. The Waikato Plan Leadership Committee disestablishment. We've got Director May joining us. You want to introduce the item there, Tracy?
Morning, Madam Chair, morning councillors.
Might get you to put that mic just
closer.
no, just point it. Hey,
Oh,
point it.
sorry. Sorry, just logging in. Morning, Chair and councillors. Look, this is a report that we've considered for a while. It has been previously intimated to council. This is really an administrative matter, bringing a present committee to its cessation. The matters are outlined there in the report. Draw your attention that presently there are 14 vacancies of the 22 existing members. We've outlined what we have achieved to date, but really hopefully you will understand that the Waikato Plan Leadership Committee was a construct of its time. There has been an awful lot that has happened in this landscape over the last 3 years, and likely a lot that will happen in the next 3. So it's a recommendation to wind the committee up.
All right. Any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Marr?
Having read Tracy's report, I'm happy to move.
All right, we have a mover in Councillor Marr, a second in Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, I believe our, oh, sorry. We have our guests who have joined us, so we're going to circle back now to, this is item 7.1 for councillors. This is on page 100, and we are joined by Ross Hargood, as I understand it, and I do see Gus in the back. G'day, Gus. Sure. All right. Are we just setting up our technology? Okay.
Would you like me to start with the introductions and it'll?
Sure. That would be fantastic.
While we're doing that, I can do this.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name's Ross Hargood. I'm the chair of the Waikato Regional Property Trust and the chair of the Waikato Regional Theatre. I'm chair of the Waikato Regional Property Trust and the operating company trust. So we have one that owns the land and buildings and one that's going to operate the theatre, which Gus is part of the operating company. I have apologies from Kelvin Eglinton. Kelvin was supposed to be here, but he can't make it. And so on the next one in the line, apparently. So with us today is Ken Williamson. Ken was the inaugural chair of Momentum, and he's now one of our trustees. And Gus is our new theatre manager. He recently minted and is getting things ready for the theatre when it will open in next year sometime. Not quite sure of the day. So,
do we have a vicinity? Are we talking mid next year? Are we talking about
next year?
Next year. Just leaving it nice and broad.
End of next
Risk
year.
management.
End of next year.
End of next year.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And also we wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge the $5 million that you have, the Regional Council has given us as part of the targeted rate for the theatre. That's really good, and it's really good that it's spread out from the outlying areas as it comes. As further out you go, the less people pay because the opportunity to get to the theatre is not as great. So we really appreciate that, and we hope that those regions actually know that the theatre's theirs as well as people in Hamilton. At the time of the funding round, we received your $5 million, and we also requested $300,000 as a top up for the maintenance fund for the building. So council gives us $1 million a year for that fund, and it was in your in the proposal which got so far through council, and then it didn't happen. So we'd probably like to consider that when we could come back and have a talk to you about whether that's we could reinstitute that for the operating of the theatre, or the maintenance fund for the theatre, so we don't end up with another Founders, which has got to the point of not operating correctly. you'll be pleased to know that we've signed a fixed price contract with our contractor 2 years ago. So we know what the cost of the theatre will be unless we make some changes. And to date, we haven't made any changes, although we are contemplating a couple. Gus may talk about one of them shortly. But we are working with the contractor in a way that makes sure that they will not be, we won't bankrupt them while they're trying to build it, but we also maintain the price that we've agreed with them. So it's a really good relationship we have with them around looking at materials and making sure we know we've got to have world-class theatre, but what does world-class actually mean? Does it mean we have to import oak from somewhere to do it when something in New Zealand would be just as good? So we're working through that. We've got a service level agreement with most of our donors, including yourselves. So there's 4 payments, of which we've received 3, thank you. And Gus will talk to you about the 4th payment that's due around the Stigwood occupation, which hopefully will be at the end of next year. I just thought you might be interested in a snapshot of the funders for the theatre, and these are rounded figures, so don't add them up and say you've got more or less. These are rounded into big dollars. So 25 million from council, 15 million from Trust Waikato, Provincial Growth Fund 13 million, Regional Council 5 million, Lotteries 4, Regional Cultural and Heritage 3, private donors is about 15 million, and just as a little bit of interest, one of the donors, a single donor, has given us 2 million, and those donors live outside of Hamilton City in a small rural town. So it's pretty good that someone from has seen the benefit of a theatre, and both of them actually love theatre. So we're obviously we've got a seat with their names on it, and of course we have to thank Mitch Plaw because he was the donor of the land. He donated that whole site on the corner of Victoria Street, Embassy Park, and Saffron Jones Place. So that was really quite a significant gift that got the project going. So now I see Gus's presentation is up on the screens, and so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you, Will. If there's any questions that Gus can't answer, I'm sure Ken or I will be able to chip in, or if we don't know, we'll get back to you. So,
thank you, Mr. Hargett.
Thank you.
Welcome, Gus. Gus Sharp. Welcome to the Waikato Regional Council. I know I've met you a few times in passing. I don't know if the rest of councillors have had the benefit of meeting you. So over to you.
Sure. So I'm Gus Sharp. I moved up here in February with my wife and 2 kids. Prior to that, I was running the city venues in Wellington, which is a portfolio venue company owned by Wellington City Council and charged to run at a profit or break even or better. That was 6 venues, all in varying states of decay. So, you know, coming to a new venue is a real dream, and I think it's going to be, my observation so far is that people don't know what they're in for in terms of the size and the scale of the building and what it's actually setting out to achieve. In New Zealand, we refurbish buildings. We don't build new ones, especially in the arts. So to be involved in setting up a brand new independent theatre is really a big achievement. I'm very humbled by that. I'll give you an update on the theatre. So if we can pop to the next slide. So that's a bit smaller than I'd intended, but I can provide a copy of this to people later. So recent milestones, I'll start with the big philosophical one. We agreed on our vision and mission, which is that we are energised by the life-giving Waikato River. We commit to excellence, champion community celebration and world-class performance that continually inspires and delights audience and artists. Now that's not potentially quite as pithy as you might think, but you know, that really, to me, encompasses the scope of what we're actually out there to do. We're out there to provide a high watermark for technical services, for technical excellence in terms of what a theatre can be, you know, in terms of the nerdery that's associated with a theatre, but we want to keep that open for community groups to use that and to experience that level of production and that level of facility which most community groups are locked out of. We've recently done a price benchmarking piece of work, and we are significantly in advance of council-owned venues across the country in terms of discounts offered to community groups. Now, the big asterisk on that is that it depends on operational funding coming through. If it doesn't, then we'll have to take a more aggressive stance. But at the moment, everything's going to plan, so we should be able to keep it nice and affordable. The next thing that we've done that I'm really proud of is we've completed our first round of cultural integration consultation with mana whenua groups. So that is, we've got this building, how do we make it represent the people in the place? So that is integrating geometric patterns and innocuous things like carpet, as well as looking at looking at commissioned artwork, all of that sort of stuff that turns a building that could be almost anywhere into a unique representation of place. So that's really exciting for me. Construction-wise, which I know is what everybody's interested in, we're by and large on track. We've erected the structural steel, poured all the basement concrete. We've got more reinforcing steel than I think I've ever seen in one place. I think this building is 90% steel at this point. And we're moving on to the second composite floor, and I'll show you some photos later on where you can really start to see the outline of actually what it is and the scale. So that's what we've been up to lately. And if we go to the next slide, here's where we're going. So the next things that we're looking at are mainly in terms of firming up our operations. So ticketing provider, who's that going to be, who's going to sell the tickets, confirmation of technical services, which is exactly what lights are we buying, exactly what speakers, all that sort of stuff, and make sure that we're ahead of, because the building was spec'd in 2016, so let's make sure to what extent the technology moved on. So we're doing a review of that to make sure that we're still there. Next one is confirmation of a hospitality partner. So that's along the Victoria Street frontage. There's a restaurant and a bar, and there's hospitality spaces in there. So we're talking to people in the market around the country about who's going in there, how they interact with the theatre, all that sort of thing. One of the big things for me that I want to make sure that we do in this point is make it clear that when people are using the venue for cultural reasons, if they have cultural significance attached to certain foods, that we're actually allowing them to bring that food in. We're not wrapping them up in a very restrictive contract with our hospitality supplier. So that's been put on the table right at the start to make sure that we're not running into problems later on. Branding and identity. Waikato Regional Theatre is a great name, but it doesn't roll off the tongue. So what are we actually going to call ourselves? How are we going to be perceived by the community? All that sort of stuff. And that's a pretty big piece of work. And the last one that's going to come up early next year is we're actually going to, once we've done the branding identity, once we've confirmed all those things, go out to the touring industry, whose cycles are about 18 months, to actually say, hey, we're here, this is what we are, this is what we look like, this is what we provide, and this is how much we cost. Start getting that calendar really filled up of touring stuff first, because they have the longer cycles, and then we'll narrow it down to national and then local after that, because they have shorter organising and production cycles. So that's where we're going. And the next slide. Challenges. They're all financial, shockingly. So the last 2 million of capital funding still outstanding. Securing operational funding, we're working with a number of partners to put together a runway for the first 3 years that will allow us to launch strong. What we know from opening previous venues, and I opened the St James and Wellington, is that starting strong just gives you a big push of momentum as the rock's rolling downhill, and you start to see audiences fill up faster if their favourite acts are playing in the first 6 months. My sort of yardstick for a good launch, a launch is not a single night, a launch is 6 months, and it's getting all sort of segments of the community through that venue within 6 months, because what we know from market research in Wellington is that if somebody hasn't visited a venue for 6 months, the odds of them coming back drop off significantly. So it's important to get people up there while the blood is up and while people are really excited about a new building. So that's what the operational funding is mainly for. Once we get up and running on an operational basis, we can probably wash our face, touch wood. But it's getting everything up and going that we're looking for at the moment. And the last one is securing funding for cultural integration work. So we can do a certain level of cultural integration based on infusion into building materials. So that's carpet, that's etching on the wall, much like this beautiful room. But if we're talking about commissioning sculptural works or pose or wahara or something similar, then that we need to find funding for. So yeah, all financial. And the next slide. So I thought I'd take you through the building because I love the building and it's really interesting to me. So this is what we call the stalls level. And if you remember Founders was just this level. So it didn't have balcony and ceiling. So this is the stalls. You can see the size of the stage. The square in the middle is the trap room. That's where, if you ever see people disappear off stage, they're falling onto a bunch of foam underneath that square. That you can see the boardwalk. That's Riverside, and you can see the green rooms over on the left, as well as the lobby on the right. Now this level is actually underneath Victoria Street. It's not street level, which gives us unique thermal and acoustic properties, which is really, really cool. Next slide, please. This is Victoria Street frontage. So the left upper is Victoria Street, and the right lower is obviously the river. So you can see where the restaurant and hospitality areas are on Victoria Street. Then we've got the balcony, which is about 350 seats. Sorry, the circle, about 350 seats, and further green rooms, and this is mainly where people are going to walk into the venue. And next slide, please. And this is what we call the gods, or the balcony, because you're seated up high with the gods, is where that comes from. And this is the second floor of the heritage building, and this is where we have a multi-purpose room which can be used for various different things. There's hospitality areas, there's a sponsors lounge, private hosting lounge, stuff like that as well. And this is where there's also a proposed art gallery along that Victoria Street frontage. And I think the next slide is, yeah, I just quite like how these images build on each other. It's like those books when you were kids. Next slide, please. Yes, next slide. Sorry, normally I tap through them. And this is a cross-section of the building. So you can see the 3 floors. You can see we've got plenty of storage underneath the stalls, which is great. You can also see the height of what we call the fly tower above the stage. And that's where all of our technical gear is hoisted when it's not in use. And if you ever see scenery changes, it's just going up and down like that. So it's a series of counterweighted pulleys and systems. And there's a very talented group of people called flymen or fly people. And they are just literally pulling on cables backstage. Next slide, please. So I'll take you through some visualizations of the building quite quickly. So this is Riverside. If you're on a boat in the river, this is what it'll look like. And this is obviously the heritage frontage, the Old Hamilton Hotel. So this is Victoria Street, and it looks amazing, frankly. And next one. This is an old staircase that has been pulled out and is going to be reassembled bit by bit by our construction team, lovingly restored, and it's a real nod to the past use of the building. So this is a visualization, not finalised, of the entrance to the theatre through Embassy Park. Embassy Park probably look a bit different than this, but it sort of gives you an idea of what people are going to be walking into. This is in the sort of lobby as you come in. You can see the Ralph Hoteri up there on the wall, which is coming out of Founders and is being refurbished. One of the real remarkable things about this theatre is how open it is to its surroundings. Lots of theatres are pretty closed off, so it's pretty cool. It's going to be full of light. And next slide, please. Next slide, same, different angle. And this is looking up. You can see there's a real sense of scale and space and light in the building. And so we're really encouraging people to be in the space. And part of the way that we're doing that is, rather than having access control at the door or the lobby, we'll have access control in the actual auditorium doors. So people can come in and have a drink or hang out with their friends before they go to a show, even if they're not going to a show. And for me, that was one of the bugbears of previous venues I've worked in. It never made any sense why you couldn't walk in the venue, because they check your ticket twice, why don't they just do it once? So changing things like that is part of the opportunities that we have with an independent venue. So next slide, please. This is the piece de resistance. This is the auditorium view. You can see that it's pretty cool. It's modelled after a mid-century theatre, so it's very similar to elements of Founders. It's very similar to the MFC in Christchurch, and it's very similar to MFC in Wellington, obviously, and the Christchurch Town Hall as well. All the wood is chosen for its acoustic properties. There's an acoustic halo up the top, and I think it's been computer modelled to death in terms of acoustics. So we're really looking forward to seeing what comes out. And this is what, if you're ever standing on stage, this is what you'll see. So the big difference between this and Founders, and the only reason I'm referencing that is because it's what most people use as a reference, is that we're about half the depth from stage edge to rear wall, and then we stack up. And what that means is that your viewing angles are a lot better. It's a lot more of an intimate performance, and the acoustic properties are a lot better as well. So you're closer to the stage, and you can see more by going up as opposed to going back. So that's really exciting as well. And here are some recent construction pictures. So that curve in the center there, that demarcates the orchestra pit from the stalls. I know it looks all a bit busy, but I can see a theatre over the top of it. Yeah. So behind that is all stage, in front of that is all audience. And what you can see there is it's pretty much equal, which is really, as I said, that's a result of the stacking of the levels. And what that means is that we can accommodate big shows, we can accommodate much bigger shows than what we're seeing currently, because shows are getting bigger, they're also getting heavier. So our roof is a lot more sturdy than many others as well. And what that means is that if we can accommodate the high watermark of heavy, big shows, then we can get those shows because they don't have to be redesigned for our theatre. And if they don't have to be redesigned, there's no extra cost in coming here, aside from logistics, which is actually a big deal. So where we're going for, and it might seem like overkill, but what we're trying to do is say, we are up there with the rest of the cities and regions in terms of our facilities, and there's no reason that you can't bring the show here, and we have the audiences that want to see it. So that's really where we're getting to, is removing barriers that lazy promoters and lazy producers are used to say, nah, we're not going to bother. And that's really what my job is convincing people to try it once, and as long as the audience is there, they're going to do it again. So it's, like I said, it's about getting momentum right out of the starting blocks. And there's some more construction photos as well. That's from Riverside. You can really see how deep it goes into the riverbank as well. And like I said, there's acoustic and thermal benefits to that as well. And yeah, there's the frontage. I think there's more steel in there than there is in many buildings, to be honest, holding it up. And it survived a cyclone and an earthquake so far, so hopefully it'll keep staying up. I think that's basically it in terms of pictures. So yeah, I think, as I said, the big challenges for us are financial. One of the things that we are seeing at the moment is that companies are tightening their belts, donors are tightening their belts. That's not unexpected. What that has meant for us is that some of our donations have been stretched over a longer period, which has an impact on cash flow and things like that. And the seed I'd probably like to plant today is our current final payment with the Regional Council is pegged to Certificate of Public Use or Certificate of Compliance. It's whether we can unpeg it to that, get it earlier, which we can then use to smooth our cash flow by putting it in term deposits while we're in a uniquely high interest environment. We are talking to the PGF about that as well. They've said that they put a paper up recommending that. It is election time. Whether or not that paper will get looked at prior to the election is up for debate. But we're going out to a lot of our funders and saying, look, if we can front load our payments, it's going to help us on the back end as well. So we'll approach council formally about that, but just wanted to mention it so you didn't think I showed up here and didn't say anything. Any questions about the building, progress, operational model, any of that?
Councillor Newbound.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming in. Appreciate the update. Quick, easy question and maybe another harder one. Are you going to be able to see the river from up in the foyer type area?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, the only place that you won't be able to see the river will be on Victoria Street side, the Heritage Building front, and once you're actually in your seat, because it might be a bit distracting in the theatre.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to look in that stage, aren't you? So, now, your colleague there, sorry, I forgot your name. Ross. Yeah, Ross, you talked about the fact that it was a fixed price contract on too much you used 2 years ago. We've obviously been in a pretty inflationary type environment, aggressive inflationary environment. It's a bit hard to imagine that there hasn't had to have been some readdressing of some of the building spec. Can you give us some assurance that the specs that you originally set out to achieve are still going to be achievable within that financial envelope? Because that seems challenging to me. But
look, it is challenging, and what we've done is we're working closely with the contractor and the subcontractors to make sure that that we keep that pricing, we get the best pricing for it. And so it's not all about price. It's about, we still have to meet the spec, as you said. So we have engaged Charcoal Blue, who were the original designers and had come up with the concept for the theatre. So we engage them. So if the contractor comes with us and says, I want to change all the timber for mica or something like that, we'll send that off to Charcoal Blue and say, will this work? Will it affect acoustics? Will it affect the heating and ventilating? Will it affect the lighting? Will it reflect more light? All those things. So we will only move on a cost-saving activity as long as the consultant tells us or the designer tells us that it won't affect the quality of all of those things in the building. If it does, we don't accept the variation. But we are looking at things, there was some drainage stuff that came up the other day that, we could save quite a bit of money if we rerouted the drainage. And so we're doing it in bits and pieces, keeping that cost down, or keeping the builders' cost.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Thanks, Stu. Councillor Mahuta.
Kia ora, just on the mana whenua stuff, at council here we are working with Te Hao Kirikiri Roy. If that's not a group you're working with, they can
We are.
most of that
We are.
for you, so thank you for that. Probably I want to understand, to be a venue of choice, parking is the second thing after the venue, and I would like to understand what Hamilton City is doing about that. All those years, when this project first started, we asked the same question, and they were yet to put forward something. So again, just in the interest of the venue, so it's been heck, we could have the best venue but the hardest one to get to. So
Fair enough. And I think when I was interviewing for the job, that never occurred to me because every venue I've ever worked in, none of them have ever had parking. So I think that's sort of a unique consideration that I hadn't considered when I came up. But engaging with community, talking to a lot of Rotary groups, to a lot of friendship groups, it has come up a lot. So I definitely understand it. I think what I would say is that there are a number of parking buildings that have come online since the building was spec, and there are future buildings to come online as well. The Union Square car park is one great example. We also did a walk around and a count around, and within a 10-minute radius, there's 1,500 on-street parks as well. We also will have mobility parks, obviously outside of our theatre, drop-off zones, all the rest of it. We are talking to Hamilton City Council about their Flex bus program. It's yours? Sorry. Well, it's a great idea. I really like it.
We agree.
Yeah, good. I've used it heaps. I think it's revolutionary, to be honest. And the great thing about a theatre and great thing about shows is that we know when capacity hits. We know that people have to be there by 7:30 for an 8 p.m. curtain. We know that people are going to leave. We know the show's going to finish at 10, whatever it is. So we are going to be working in with that as well and seeing what we can do there. Other transportation things that we do, or what I've done in previous venues, is working with retirement homes to make sure that their drop-offs are booked in, especially in our drop-off areas. And we have people outside front of house staff who manage that as well. So absolutely understand that parking is an issue. I think that public transport has a huge role to play in that. And I think that as Hamilton, and we were talking about the city in particular, as Hamiltonians who live in the city get better public transport, they will use it more and free it up for people who are coming from further afield. Oh, I know, yeah. I know. Well, I was really surprised how quickly cell phone reception went down. But you know, we don't have quite enough people to swamp the towers.
Councillor Smith.
Thanks. Can you just remind me what the maximum fee was?
1,300.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Just two questions. Talked about parking. Can you just give us an update on the pedestrian bridge over the river? If you...
I don't know much about that, if I'm honest. So I work for the Waikato Theatre Operating Company, and as far as I understand it, that project is with Momentum, who are sort of not me.
Okay.
So I don't know much about it, but I think it's a really cool idea.
Thank you. My second question would be on your funding. You haven't managed to secure any naming right sponsors.
No.
Is that in the pipeline? Or?
We're still actively approaching. We've hit up all the big three-letter firms and three-letter banks and all that. There's just not much interest in the current environment, and some of the feedback we've felt is that it wouldn't look good in a time of belt tightening to be doing that. So we're still investigating. What we are doing as an aside is thinking about how could we get the community involved in naming the theatre? How could we have innovative approaches to that? But in terms of it turning into the Exxon Mobil Theatre, I don't think there's a huge amount of interest out there in the market. But we are, of course, chasing down every lead.
Great, thank you for that. I suppose I'd just like to follow up on the public transport aspect of it. As regional council, we provide public transport across this region,
yes.
And as this is a regional theater, I think it's really important that you engage with our public transport planners. As you can imagine, some of our ratepayers that live a bit further afield may question whether or not this is something that ratepayer dollars should be going towards. To help us with that conversation, I think if we work in with our public transport system, that's going to enable people from further afield to effectively and efficiently engage with what you have on offer. And I think that that's a really important conversation to have, particularly if you even consider that we have a train between Auckland and Hamilton. We have utilized that train for other types of events. And so there's an opportunity there to attract from even outside, attract audiences from even outside the region. So
absolutely. And I think one of the things one of the ways that I have been talking to, especially international producers and promoters, is talking about how mobile the region is and how much people are willing to drive to go see shows. I mean, my as I said before, my yardstick is about what can we bring into the region that is not coming here. It's not about sucking stuff up from other venues and just amalgamating it all. It's about what new things. How do we get audiences from Auckland? How do we get audiences from further afield? Because we've got the same shows as Auckland, but we've got it in a better venue, and you can do other stuff around it.
Yeah, and I've seen in other places where, as part of the ticket price, it includes public transport as a way of getting people to and from the venue pretty effectively. So I encourage you to have those conversations sooner rather than later, so that we can, so that everybody can incorporate it in any planning that needs to happen ahead of that. Councillor Cookson.
My question would just be getting the youth to use it in the future, because I just spent all weekend in Auckland at the New Zealand Choir Championships at Auckland Town Hall. 750 students singing from all around New Zealand in a very small venue that wasn't adequate for, but if you can get those talented kids to enjoy an amazing facility, there's your future use of it, and they'll want to come back for other things. So there's something in the future try and get the New Zealand Kawaii Champs here of amazing, talented kids that want to show off their talents. Yeah, thank you.
No, no worries, absolutely. And we've already been engaging with a number of secondary schools around the area to talk about, you know, how they could interact with the theatre. I mean, you know, it's more than simply showing up, going on stage and leaving. It's, you know, how do we get these kids involved in setting up the lights? How do we teach them about audio processing? How do we teach them about hospitality? How do we teach them about all those things that go into a theatre that are useful skills anywhere in the world? And especially if you're a bit of a nerd like myself, it's really fun.
Fantastic. Well, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Councillor
hi.
Graff.
Yes, yeah. Look, just for local, smaller production units, like my son does theatre stuff. And they do small productions and things. Is there access for those types of productions, or is it smaller stuff? Or
Yeah, I think there's sort of two ways you can approach that, especially when you're talking about really, really small productions. So from a performance point of view, there's nothing worse than performing to an empty room. So, you know, if we've got 1,300 seats and we're talking about 50 people, then we're probably not the place for those productions, not because we don't want them, but because it's actually not a good experience for them or for the audience. However, that being said, we'll give anybody a chance if they want to try it. You know, I've seen tiny little local shows, especially choral shows and especially Pacifica choral shows, sell 3,000 tickets. You know, so it's not for me to say no. You're not. You know, we're not a curated venue. We're open to everybody. So I think that it's really, you know, anybody can give it a go. We obviously have costs of opening the door, so and they do scale with size. But that being said, it's with in-house technical provision in terms of top-of-the-line lights, top-of-the-line sound, you'd be hard-pressed to do something in a cheaper venue. Like, it's actually going to be pretty cost-effective. The real problem is going to be whether or not people can fill it, and if they can't fill it, what's the vibe like? You know, it's sort of that intangible.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sharp, Mr. Hargood, and Mr. Williamson. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very exciting to see this project continue to progress. I'm sure that that you'll bring it in on time, on budget, all the good things, and really looking forward to how this becomes an additional draw card for this region, particularly in the arts and creative spaces. So, kia ora for that. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to receive the report from the Waikato Regional Theatre? Mover and Councillor Downard, and a second in Councillor Cookson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today.
If you'd like councillors like to visit the site, if you give us a bit of time, we can arrange for those to come. We'll take you onto the site now, so you can get a feeling about.
I think that would be really beneficial.
We'll talk.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do that.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. All right. Okay, just seeing how we go. We going? We continuing on? Happy to continue. All right, let's move to item 7.5. That's what I'm on, right? This is, sorry? Option A. So this is, sorry, just getting everybody on the right page. We've got, this is item 7.5 on page 166 is the electoral system review. We do have a mover for option A. We have a second in Councillor Graff. I do want to just get this briefed, so so we'll go to Molly, just if you're wanting to. You really want to power through this, don't you, Councillor Smith? Is there any comments you would like to make, Molly?
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. Look, I think this is a routine decision, and as Councillor Smith has said, it's pretty straightforward. I assume that everybody has read the report, so I'll take it as read, and I won't add anything. I'll just answer any questions that might come about from the discussion. Kia ora.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marley, for the report. Just a quick question. Last time, Hamilton City had a different electoral system to what we were using. Is there any reflections on how much confusion that caused? How we could, if looks like we are going to continue, maybe I haven't caught up what Hamilton City's going to do, how we could make it easier for the public, learnings from confusions from last time.
Good question, thank you, Councillor Strange. Look, I haven't dived deeply into exactly the outcome for Hamilton City and whether or not STV did result in a reduced voter turnout or a increase in invalid or blank votes. But what I will say is that generally voting right across the country did go through a decline. In the 2022 local election, and some of the initial thinking around what had caused a reduction in voter turnout is the complicated nature of it, which does include a system that enables councils to choose between two options. So that is one factor that certainly complicates the voting system.
Yeah, just thinking specifically for the Hamilton constituency of Waikato Regional Council. Yeah, so those ratepayers, two different systems within the same election.
Yeah, that's correct. All councils will be turning their mind to their voting system, and there's certainly an ability for councils to change between the two systems. For the 2022 local election, all councils except for Hamilton City went with the same option, and that is the first past the post. And across the country, it is the preferred option, with 80% last time round electing or opting to use first past the post, and only 20% opting for the alternative, which is STV.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Why I'm moving this is that we have a number of electorates that are single candidates, single representatives. We have some, if we look at the last election a year ago, there was a number in Hamilton, I think got up to 8 in Whitehall, but realistically we've got constituencies with only single, so they can only vote for one person, but then if we confuse it with the first part, the STV, I always thought that when the district health boards went, it made it a little bit less confusing for people, but the reality, it didn't change the numbers voting consistently on percentage wise. But picking first past the post, if there's one or two, you just pick the one or the two, and it makes it simple for people. And having talked to constituents over the last 16 years, I believe it's the preferred option. So that's why I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Graf.
Marley, hi. Look, just a question about the point raised on page 175 of the agenda. In single member elections, research shows STV increases the chances for women to get elected. Do you have any feedback on why that is?
Because of the preferential nature of the system, you do tend to get greater diversity in the result. However, there are other, I guess, things that might not, that should be taken into consideration. For example, in the same document that you're referring to, there is advice that suggests that that diversity is only achieved in an election where there are more than 3 positions. And so for Waikato Regional Council, there's only one constituency that has a number that might result in greater diversity if STV was the option. So there's a number of advantages and disadvantages for both systems.
All right, so if there's no other questions, we have a mover and seconder for receiving the report and for retaining the status quo and continuing to use the first past the post electoral system. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, we will now go on to item 7.6. This is on page 182 of your agendas. This is the representation review for Māori constituencies. Molly, would you like to?
Thank you. I will make a couple of comments on this one, if I may, Madam Chair. Like the previous item, this one is related to our local elections. We are required to undertake a representation review every 6 years. And so we are about to kick off that process. And the two initial steps in a representation review include looking at your electoral system and considering Māori representation. This council, Waikato Regional Council, initially established Māori representation in 2011, which took effect for 2 terms. It then reconsidered the matter in 2017 when it undertook its next representation review, and at that time extended the provision for a further 2 terms. And so Māori constituencies have been in place here at Waikato Regional Council for more than a decade. Historical poll provisions, though, had prevented other councils from establishing Māori representation. However, in 2021, amendments to the Local Electoral Act removed those poll provisions, and since we have seen a significant increase in the number of councils that are now include Māori representation in their arrangements, and so that increase has gone from 3 to 25. And given that we are about to kick off another round of representation arrangements review, this number is likely to increase. And it is reflective of the increasing view that Māori voices within local government is valued and valuable. So turning then to the decision that Council is being asked to make today, there are 2 options. One, either to retain the status quo and continue with Māori constituencies and representation, or to disestablish those. The recommendation that has been made by staff is to retain Māori representation, and the reasons are outlined, so I won't go over them, but I will hand back to you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to move the motion and speak in support of it. Yeah, Māori representation is vitally important for our region. You know, it's so diverse in our region, so many Māori as well. Just a quick question, Marley. Is it a legal thing that we only look in 6-year chunks, or do we not look longer? Or?
Good question, thank you. It is a legal requirement for council to revisit its arrangements at least every 6 years, so at a minimum, but it can be looked at sooner than that. So we are looking at this as a minimum for 6, because it has been 6 years since we undertook our last representation review. I'm curious about your question, and that is because Waikato Regional Council is the only council in the country that has had to revisit the establishment of Māori representation because of the period of time that we've had it in place. Most others have only introduced Māori representation in 2022, and Waikato Council introduced Māori representation the election before, so that would have been 2019. And so, yes, we are the first council that has had to consider this after a period of it initially being introduced. The issue is known now because we have been through the process, and and it will become more apparent, I guess, as other councils too have to revisit this decision. And there are some proposed amendments to the Local Electoral Act to resolve this unique situation, because basically what it has highlighted is that no one ever envisioned that councils would introduce Māori representation.
Yeah, I just think it's ridiculous that that we need to keep reviewing it. It's insulting. Yeah.
All right, sorry, Councillor Kneebone, was that a second?
Motion. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I support this motion as well. That's my first point. Secondly, as I see it, because of the numbers in each of the Maori constituencies, that would not increase the numbers to 3, but that with the growth in the community, in the Maori community. So is that a possibility? I think the numbers are generally lower than the other constituencies, so I don't see an increase, but that is always a possibility with all review.
Excellent question. And we will certainly be diving into further detail about general electoral population and Māori electoral population in the coming months when we come back to council with some more information about options related to representation arrangements. But what I will share on your particular question is that with the current electoral population statistics applied, Waikato Regional Council will continue to have 2 Māori constituents, Māori members, and that number won't be more than 3. However, there is a critical point at which the number could reduce to 1, and that is if the general representation numbers decrease. And so I won't give you the number off the top of my head because I might get it wrong. But yes, if you decrease the number of general elected members, then there is a point where the Māori electoral members would reduce to 1.
Wanted to make, Madam Chair, is that if you change with the changing population, we can change the numbers. So, and I continue to support Thank you.
All right, so we've had 3 people who have, well, kind of 4 people that have spoken in favor. Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote against it. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not democratic. We're supposed to be a democratic society in New Zealand, and having people just a couple of questions for you. Are we allowed to, legally allowed to poll our constituents when they support secret Maori seats or not, legislation? Because if not, it's likely that legislation will be changed at some stage in the next couple of years. Is it possible for us to move to a 3-year term for this time and then have a poll when it becomes legal to do so?
Thank you for your questions. The ability to undertake a poll of electors on this particular matter no longer exists. When the Local Electoral Act was amended in 2021, that was the specific provision that was removed. If legislation changes at some point in the future to reintroduce that provision, and assuming that other provisions that relate to the period of which representation reviews must be undertaken, then it is possible that council could revisit this sooner than 6 years, so in a 3-year term. Yes.
There's a question that I received an answer to was, could we move this, approve it for 3-year term, and if the legislation is changed, then we can go for a poll at the next election?
Yes, that is possible, provided that that's a decision of council.
Councillor Graf?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I think this is an opportunity to move away from division and make a transition back to the a more democratic electoral process. So I'm opposed to the motion. Thanks.
All right, we've had 4 speak in favor, we've had 2 against. Are you speaking in favor or
Speaking
against?
for the days, the only person qualified to speak for the Māori boards.
Righto. Councillor Mahuta.
Have been here since this council bravely went about Māori wards, and that was prior to any move to have Māori wards on all councils. It was done proactively because this council had no relationship with its river iwi. Double down on that, river iwi had to go to Wellington to get a relationship with councils in its own region. I would say if you thought that that situation is past, that this council is in great conversation with its iwi, then yeah, I'd probably agree with you that Māori views are being expressed here, but I don't think we're there yet. The other one about the democracy, 30,000 people in my constituency are able to vote for me or not. Is that not democratic? Is that somehow less democracy because they happen to be on the Māori roll? I think that's an argument in Wellington, not an argument at our council. I would hope that while we have Māori wards, Māori constituent members are safe in this council to not be questioned about their race-based representation, to not be questioned about the democracy of their election here, and to represent the views of Māori who have for some 100+ years not been at this council. Now, I've had every argument under the sun talking about why we're here, and no one says that we haven't contributed. So if it's about citizenship, about belonging in this region, about having whakapapa for this place, I should say no. And I have never been able to be here to just be home. I don't know why people will follow this conversation. In the last 6 years of you, I was asked what makes a Māori constituent being successful. I was asked to review my interest, and I've been my interest in the discussion. So I'm not sure what you're looking for in terms of Māori leadership performance. So thank you for doing it with the way you take this and so I just challenge the democracy thing with the way in elected by constituency. What do I know mine? If I go off what previous more learned than me has said, then when you go on challenge, you go off what you know. And that's what we do. So therein lies the role of Māori boards. I think we've smoothed over a lot of issues between this council and a whole lot of consistency. That we went here was speaking for my Māori constituents. And I'm not sure that, again, many of you bring that to the critical on and Malaysia. And we'd rather not have this debate for 6 years, but again, I'll defer from the vote because it's the full discussion here and non-Māori.
Stu, I'm going to let you speak as the seconder of this motion, and then I think we'll put it.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I wasn't going to, but it just suddenly occurred to me, I think I'm the only councillor that was here when the decision was made to create these seats. Although, to be honest, the decision was made prior to myself becoming here, and the council numbers were reduced from 14 to 12. So my first term on council, we only had 12 councillors. But from recollection, when the region was still trying to decide whether they thought it was a good thing, and they did, and so we made that decision. I can assure Councillor Graf and Councillor Hughes that it was a very, very democratic process, and we had an absolute minimum in terms of negative feedback from the community as well. So I'm very confident that we're doing the right thing, and I'd be pretty disturbed if this council made a decision to revisit this decision within 3 years. And in fact, I think it's somewhat frustrating and offensive that we seem to that we're down by law to keep revisiting it. So yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
So we have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and to reconfirm the retention of the Māori representation for local electoral purposes. I'm going to go ahead and put that motion.
Can I just call for a division, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute, we have to go through the roll call. Okay.
My understanding of the resolution is that this is for the next 6 years, unless in the ensuing years, council chooses to bring the issue forward.
Or unless there is national direction that changes
Yeah, well,
it, yes.
we're preempting what may or may not happen, but at the moment, it's for a 6-year term, and this council preempted by bringing it forward.
That's my understanding.
Alrighty, a division has been called. I'll call your names. Can you please indicate if you support, oppose, or abstain from the vote? Chair Story.
Support.
Councillor Clarkson.
Support.
Councillor Cookson.
Support.
Councillor Downard.
Support.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Support.
Councillor Graff.
Oppose.
Councillor Hughes.
Oppose.
Councillor Kneebone.
Support.
Councillor Marr.
Support.
Councillor Mahuta. Councillor Smith.
Support.
And Councillor Strange.
Support.
So my only concern is that not everybody had their mics on when they were voicing their vote. and just in terms of the online streaming and also the recording, I'm just looking. Dave, can you just read through those and support?
Certainly. The outcome is that I'll summarise first and then call out the votes in order. We have 9 votes in support, 2 votes opposing, 1 abstention, and 2 members are not present. The supporting votes are Councillor Story, Clarkson, Cookson, Downard, Dunbar-Smith, Kneebone, Marr, Smith, and Strange. Those in opposition are Councillors Graff and Hughes. Councillor Mahuta has abstained, and Councillors Hodge and Nicol are absent.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll now move on to item 7.7. This is on page 186 of your agenda. This is the notification of proposed private plan change 2 to the Waikato Regional Coastal Plan, Pariharaki Kai Moana. We are joined by Director Tracy May.
Sorry, Madam Chair, the council's far too efficient in its business today, so you've got me presenting this. So, Madam Chair, this is effectively an administrative matter. We had a private plan change in from Pariharaki Kai Moana in respect to an area that council had previously made it a decision on. The area was deemed to be in our regional coastal plan, so it was placed in by government. It went through a tender process, a fully contestable tender process. Pariharaki Kai Moana was the successful of 4 tenderers. Subsequent to that, there was a consent process that the successful tenderer must have progressed through. That consent process was underway. What we did find was that Subsequent to the successful tender being granted to Pari Hauraki Kaimoana for a specific area in the coastal marine area, that the actual activity would have been unable to be undertaken in that area without the extension of the area in accordance with the diagram shown on page 7. So we were going through the consent process. Pari Hauraki Kaimoana applied for a private plan change to the coastal plan as the activity was a prohibited activity. We needed to change the rules in the coastal plan as is outlined in the report. 2 specific rule amendments as is outlined in paragraph 13. We ran the process concurrently with the hearing. Because it is a plan change, only council has the ability to make a change to its policy document. So whilst the applicant has been notified of the consent conditions and they are progressing through the next step, it is an administrative matter where council must consider that recommendation from the hearing panel, endorse that, and then the next step in terms of notifying the plan change decision and awaiting any appeals is what we're seeking here from council. The options are well outlined here on page 189 and 190, with the 2 options being to accept or to not accept the panel's recommendation, with the impact detailed there on the bottom of page 189. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I've got Councillor Graff and then Councillor Hughes. Councillor Graff.
Thanks, Tracy. So currently the area is 3 square kilometres, is that right?
300 hectares, I was going to say.
3 square
that
kilometres?
might be 3 square kilometres.
So is this, if I'm looking at it, is it effectively an extension by 0.9 of a kilometre?
It is not extending the area for farming at all.
But it's permitting because of the gradient, is that right?
Yes, it's permitting the anchor oaks to go
Further,
outside the defined area for this particular purpose. Does it apply only to the applicant, or does it apply to all working within that area? Through you, Madam Chair, it applies only for the applicant for the particular activity you're wanting to undertake in this area. The tender process that we went through previous was in the process that determined who an applicant would be for resource consent. So it only applies to this area as long as Pari Hauraki Kaimoana maintain the right to undertake the activity in that defined area in the coastal plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Just on page 2, in that cross section of that itself, the line. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but am I correct in my interpretation that there are 2 visual markaboards across the creek not external to a farm, and there's nothing further on the outside of the anchor, really? And the reason I'm asking that is I've seen people caught up in the mussel farms at the moment, where traditionally these anchors extend out beyond the farm and they're not marked. And if people get their anchors caught in there when they're fishing, it's almost impossible for them to lift the anchor back and they end up losing it. So what I would like to think is that there's going to be some marker lights put on the outer extremities of where the anchors are, so anybody out there fishing will be able to identify where the risk is in terms of them being able to anchor where they can't.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll follow up with the specific consent conditions. I anticipate that matter is covered there, well covered under the NAV safety requirements. I'll follow that up. That would be a detail that would be addressed in the resource consent.
I think it would be, it's just not evident on that slide.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in support of this and I'll explain why. I have a real concern when councils don't delegate the decision making to the panel that here's the matter. We sit here and we have not heard the evidence. We have not heard the nuances of the questions, the evidence, and the testing of that evidence. And so therefore, we are not in a position to question the decision of the commissioners. So we, having appointed them, we should accept the decision as has been outlined here. And I think there should be no further issues. And it's a matter of, do we support the commissioners, accept their decision? If so, yes. And therefore, I'm happy to move it, Madam Chair, to actually, I appreciate the questions and it's understanding. So it's nothing about undoing it. But the issue is, before us, is do we accept the commissioners appointed, their decision? If not, then I think our process is wrong in appointing in the first place. And I would certainly encourage this council to look at giving the delegations to the commissioners who hear these matters for us to actually make that decision going forward. So because councils can give that power to the independent commissioners. So happy to move this on the face of it, Madam Chair.
All right, I've got a mover in Councillor Smith and a second in Councillor Mahuta. Just so I'm clear, I believe we do delegate the decision, but that council itself has to choose to give effect to that decision. Is that correct? So this is part of the process we have to go through?
For us, and it has been very clear for our councillors that decisions that are delegated on policy matters come back to this council. So you are fully aware of what the decisions are about. I take on board what Councillor Smith is saying in this regard. It is a minor matter, if there are such matters in terms of policy, a minor matter that perhaps we could have decided we'll just put it straight through, but my recommendation is that it is, when we give those delegations, it is a recommendation back to the council, taking on board exactly what Councillor Smith had said. They have the power and ability to hear and determine, but it is a recommendation back to council as you are the holders of our policy documents and set the policy. And for me, it's very important that you are aware when changes are made at a policy level.
Madam Chair, can I just have clarity here? Because I understand the legislation says this council can delegate the decision making, and we just come back for our information that that decision has been made. Or we can delegate, you hear it and recommend to council, and council then adopt. There's two actual processes. And what I'm saying is, if we're appointing independent commissioners to hear.
And so what's before us is adoption.
So that means that we didn't give them the delegated ability to make the final decision, so it's a recommendation. So I'm just saying in future, could we consider, because if we were to say no to this, it has to start again basically, or say go back and sort this and rehear it. And that is just a waste of money.
Thanks for those points. Thanks for those points. Oh, sorry, I just need you to do your microphone.
Just to your point, Noel, I think in last term we were being first consents of this nature, and Hauraki Council was being careful. We did receive that direction from staff, but we decided, for whatever reason, first consents in the golf for this purpose, we would want to mind each marker. So just so you know.
All right, I've got Councillor Dunbar-Smith and then Councillor Hughes again.
Yes, I'd like to support what Councillor Smith has recommended, and I think aquaculture is an important growth area for us, and it's quite constrained under the coastal plan, even the revised coastal plan. So if this allows more capacity here, that's a good thing. I just wanted to check with you on, we've got here the recommendation be adopted, and then we're notifying the decision on the plan change.
Correct.
Under item 11, it says here, a decision on the resource consent application has been made to grant the application subject to conditions. No appeals to this decision were received in the appeal period. So are those two separate things?
They are. Through you, Madam Chair. So what we're dealing with here is a change to the rules of our regional coastal plan. A resource consent is a separate matter. Once the rules have been determined, then you apply for a resource consent. It's not uncommon. It's not ideal, but it is not uncommon to have concurrent plan change and resource consent processes where it's found there is a administrative flaw in the plan, which is where we're at with this one.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, look, I support this. I'm not against it. What I am concerned about is the safety aspects of what's being shown to us on this plan. And with respect to Councillor Smith, the commissioners have approved existing infrastructure which is in place for the mussel farms, and they don't include the safety feature, which I think is critical if we're going to make sure it's safe for boaters. It may have been an oversight, I don't know. But all I'm asking is that if there's any way possible that we can influence the decisions of the commissioners, that it should be lights put on the
So we've
outside.
got the undertaking from Director May to check those consent conditions and ensure that, that those safety matters.
We can't ensure
And
that decision has been made. What I will do is find out and see how it was addressed. What I would like to say is the diagram on page 187 is indicative to help you understand the concept. I imagine there would have been far more comprehensive and detailed information lodged with the resource consent. What this diagram does is help us to convey to you why we need the plan change for the extra side pieces. Great.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
This may be indicative, but I'm going on practical experience of
Yep,
fishing
understand
up there. I'm sure our chief
the
executive
safety
has experienced the same issues. So, thank you.
All right, Councillor Marr.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm in support of this motion. I did identify that it's relative to the finfish farm that has already gone through. It allows them to use as much of that area as possible. Practically wise, I think those items that Councillor Hughes is raising can be dealt with in navigation safety, etc. And I don't think it's an issue around this proposed plan change. So I'm in support. Thank you.
All right, so we have a mover in Councillor Smith, a seconder in Councillor Mahuta. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we are now
Madam
going
Chair,
to move. Sorry.
could I just have an abstention recorded because of a connection to one of the submitters? Thank you.
Sure. So we'll record that Councillor Clarkson has abstained from that vote. All right, we're now going to continue to power through, people, to item 7.8. This is on page 218 of your agenda. This is the appointment of the regional on-scene commander. And we have, I believe, Greg, Director Ryan? We've got a mover and Councillor Mahuta and a second in Councillor Dunbar Smith. Was there any questions or points of clarification from councillors? Nope. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Yeah, take a seat. Motion carried. All right, thank you very much, councillors. That brings us to the conclusion of our public items. The addendum, we did that for the Te Nahinui signatures or agreement signatures. So that, again, has brought us to the end of our public portion of our meeting today. So what I'm going to do is we'll have a mover and seconder into Councillor Cookson moving, Councillor Mahuta seconding that we move into public excluded for the reasons articulated on screen. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we are going to adjourn for 10 minutes. What? Oh, yeah, we're going to adjourn for 10 minutes and then come back for our next set of items. Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant.
All right, okay, so we are now back in the open session where we will close this meeting of the 31st of August, 2023. Dave, can you take us through the karakia?
Absolutely. Unihia, unihia mai te ura tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama tinako, ti tinana, ti hininaro, I te ara takatu, koia rā I rongo e whakairea aki ki ronga, kia tina, homie, huie, taikie.
Thank you very much, councilors. I appreciate your attention and your willingness to move smoothly through this council meeting today. We'll declare the council meeting adjourned at 12:25 p.m.